Welcome to another edition of the Ryan Report. Today we're going to talk about how September has led to rapid plant maturation and the effects of dry down that we've seen because of these adverse weather conditions. So we'll start out by just looking at a map of Illinois, concentrating on how we've changed over time in terms of the drought monitor and then our moisture rank for August. So you probably saw this if you watched my last video, I focused on Douglas and Edgar counties. That's what the arrows are. But you just see this portion of East Central Illinois that I cover. We've clearly had a deterioration of, moisture availability, where we're now in a stage 2 drought for the majority of my coverage area here in 2025. When we compare, how we've changed from August over into September and how August was one of the driest on record. So we want to compare that to 2024, the southeastern part of my coverage area, I would call it similar, but as you see over on the right-hand side, we did have more rain in August of last year compared to this year. And that brings me to, if we're talking about a lack of moisture, what looks like it's going to be now an extended look at some elevated temperatures. If we look at, what we remember about last year is that we had temperature ranges where we remembered, September was unusually hot. We had a lot of corn that started getting down to 15% or even under. And same with soybeans, a lot of single-digit soybeans moisture that, obviously we were having a tough time being able to get everything in the back of the combine and over into the auger carts and so on to maximize our bushel. And so I just wanted to compare, where we were at last year. Obviously we are in a worse situation in terms of our soil moisture. And thus I think we had plants that are further along as they've started off, reaching full maturity. And now we're getting ready to go through a very similar heat stretch like what we saw last year, at this time frame where last year was September 15th through September 22nd. So, almost 8 days there where we were quite a bit above normal on temperature ranges, and we're getting ready to go into another 10-day stretch here in this September. So if I looked back at harvest moistures for corn, we could see that at this point last year, which I would say we had a healthier crop and a higher yield for the majority of, April corn that we're getting ready to start picking, we were already hovering in the mid-teens. The reports that have come in so far for me have been anywhere 18 upwards 22-23% for some of this April corn that's been coming out. And like I said, it's not the healthiest compared to last year. So, I have a feeling we're going to find this really quick, moisture levels down to these levels, because we had premature droop and maturation. And so we're going to definitely suck the moisture out with turning up the temperature ranges here over the next 10 days. The same holds for soybean. Soybeans last year at this time, we were already 10-12%, seeing quite a bit of that. I know we're just getting ready to start cutting some soybeans in the area, but again, I feel like both crops we're going to be quickly arriving to, right at where the elevator will take them, if not under. So if I think through, I guess, what I'm focusing on with these temperature ranges, it would be I would start today on corn, because I think it's quickly going to get down to levels where we're going to be right at 15%. We start seeing loss due to, corn, once it starts getting under high teens to low 20s, you definitely start to lose a little bit out of the, we can't get everything into the combine. And so I think with how fast this moisture is going to come out, we should prioritize harvesting immediately, because both crops are definitely going to be losing their moisture here pretty quick. So that wraps it up for today's video, and thank you for your time.